Thank you all for being willing to talk about the impact of hate and about the impact that hate is having on you as individuals and as Jews and as the impact it's having on the community overall. I'm really interested in trying to get underneath that surface. And so I appreciate your being willing to talk with me today. As I said, I'm recording this. The Jewish News is providing this Zoom link for us. They may pull photos from the discussion or screenshots, and they may choose to actually put this up online as part of our conversation. So let's see how it goes. And just to begin, what I was hoping each of you would do was introduce yourselves, and just in terms of name and if you lean politically conservative or if you lean politically liberal, and then the community that each of you lives in. And I'll start on the left. I've got Hetty. So Hetty, I'll go to you first.
Sure, happy to be the guinea pig here. I'm Hetty Milgram, and just this and how I lean politically, those are the two things you wanted to know.
And in the city you live in, yep.
Oh, I live in Beechwood, and I lean Democrat, but I like to think that I'm open to various perspectives. But I guess in the last number of years, with the Trump administration doing what they've been doing, I'm squarely in Democrat camp, but I would not say I am a progressive liberal. There are some things I am, but mostly not.
Okay, Beth.
I live in Pepper Pike. We all live probably within 10 minutes of each other, but and I just think of myself as a centrist. I lately I have not voted for Trump, but certainly could if things evened out and we had some sanity. And I'm sort of a little unhappy with both sides of the coin, truthfully, right now. But that being said, I'm a centrist, and I have been voted Democrat most recently just because I thought the other candidates were extreme. But there's a lot of extreme coming up with Democrats these days too. So I don't know what I'm going to do. And so that's my story.
Thank you. Robert or Gary.
Gary, it's Gary.
Actually.
Robert. Oh, it says Roberta up there. Oh,
Yeah.
that's funny.
It does, but I know it's Gary Kaplan.
Oh, that's funny.
For the record.
Let me change that. Rename. Wow.
Yeah, we do know.
I didn't even notice that. So I'm, Gary Kaplan. I live in Orange Village, and I view myself as an independent. I do lean right economically, but I lean left socially. So I pick and choose as I go. I don't have any devotion to any one party.
Okay. And Nancy.
I'm Nancy Zimmerman. I live in Orange. I am a lifelong Democrat. I lean pretty far left, maybe center left, but further left than probably anybody else in the room at this point. And up until recently, I would say that I only voted Democrat as a matter of principle and wasn't willing to think about another option. But the way that the climate is now, I recognize that I'm also disappointed in everything that's out there, and I'm sort of stuck as to what to do.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you all for your honesty and candor. So I'm now going to read the opening that I shared with all of you, but I want to, for the record, read it and get us in the right mindset. So this conversation is focused on how you and other members of the greater Cleveland Jewish community are adapting to cope with the hate that seems to confront us all daily. The hate comes in the form of news reports, the stories friends share, and personal interactions. Our lives are bombarded to varying degrees by political hate, anti-Semitism, racism, and more. All of it is hurtful, Much of it is mindless and malicious. Some of us cope by bottling up our anger. Others try to shut out the news. Others commiserate with a friend or loved one. Still others vent our anger at people around us. Some may refuse to acknowledge these issues entirely. To help us appreciate the topic with a common understanding, I sent you all a list of 2026 headlines pertaining to hate that we as U.S. Jews have faced and digested in the past 5 months. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to read to you, just to refresh your memory, 5 headlines from a list that was probably had 30 to 40 headlines. One is from the Jerusalem Post, U.S. anti-Semitism at its most alarming level. This from Fox News. New York City anti-Semitic incidents nearly tripled despite other crimes reaching record lows. From Forbes, how the political class makes us hate and mistrust each other. From The Atlantic, anti-Semitism is becoming mainstream. And finally, from CNN, anti-Semitic violence worldwide in 2025 killed the highest number of Jews in 30 years, study finds. So, Hetty, I'm going to start with you. How do the headlines make you feel? What do they make you think about?
I wrote down, I can barely read my own handwriting, but I took a minute when I was reviewing that earlier today to just write down a list of reactions, because the same headline can make me feel many different ways depending on time of day where I am. Overall, profoundly sad, seething with anger, feeling like it's a hopeless situation, and feeling a little bit like Sisyphus, constantly pushing that rock up the hill only to have it come down again. I think a lot about parallels with Nazism, things that happened 80, 90 years ago in Germany, and things that are parallels with that today. All these things evoke that for me. And then one of the headlines, I think, had something about the price to pay that college students are going left of center and having anti-Israel, anti-Zionist thoughts because there's a price to pay that they think. I guess because we're comfortable, we're affluent, we seem to be stronger. But to me, I feel very hopeless over the fact that a majority of certainly Jewish young people, if not really Jewish adults, don't know our history. They don't know the history of the state of Israel. They don't know the history of the Jewish people going back 3,000 years. But they hear something sympathetic. And I have tremendous sympathy for what has gone on in Gaza and the incredible destruction and all. And at the same time, understand how that happened. But the point is that there is more to the story than what seems to be the easy one-sided thing to look at. And I wish that people could take the time and understand that they're ignorant and need to learn. And then the other little piece, and I think this is still related to that, in terms of reaction, I am a speaker at the Maltz Museum and also for the face-to-face program for Kol Israel, where I tell my parents' Holocaust story. And this is the kind of thing I try to do as much of it as I possibly can, because that feels like a positive thing to me. Trying to educate people, many people who've never met a Jew, and trying to meet people and connect with people, because when you meet somebody, it makes a whole difference. So it's like you can't boil the ocean, but maybe one thing at a time. So.
Lee C. Shapiro said much the same to me during an interview about it. If you get to know somebody, it's harder to hate them. Right? So, Gary, how about the headlines? How do they make you feel?
Like Hetty, it's a range of emotions. Anger is one, obviously. But the other is not so much hopelessness as helplessness. Where do you turn? Our ancestors, our grandparents came here from Eastern Europe to escape exactly what we're facing now, because America was a safe haven. And that's to say there wasn't any anti-Semitism back then, but certainly after World War II and the Holocaust, it was markedly diminished. And now America doesn't feel like a safe haven anymore. And the question is, I've had multiple conversations with close friends. Where do you go? What do you do? Is there anywhere you can go? I mean, you can't go to Australia, you can't go to Europe. Take your pick. There's almost like, friends of mine, a friend of mine got a citizen, not a citizenship, a residency permit that he could live in Mexico. You know, so helplessness is really the word that comes strong for me because even though right here in our little shtetl we haven't faced what those headlines are showing and what's happening in New York City and some of the other things, you feel it's inevitable. And what are we going to do when one of our synagogues gets a car rammed through it or gets shot at? Where are we going to go as Jews? How do we fight this? How do we shut this down? And it just feels helpless. So that's the big word that comes out for me.
Okay, very good. Nancy, headlines. How do those make you feel?
So I wrote down three words. Heartbreaking, scary, and overwhelming. I think that it doesn't a day does not go by without multiple headlines. And if you are well read or you sign up, if you get the Atlantic and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and whatever else you get, there's this barrage of headlines. And it's really hard to do the day-to-day of it. Excuse me, my tendency is to turn it off or put it away, look at the headline and then not read the article because it's gotten to the point where it's too much. I also wanted to respond to something Gary said, which was I was thinking also, which is like we live in this weird bubble here on the east side of Cleveland that I don't know that many of my friends live in. Like it feels in some way like nothing is touching us. Like we don't see it or feel it in the same way. But I do have kids in college. And so that's at the forefront of my mind. I'm worried about my children. I'm worried about my future grandchildren and what this brings that up for me. For me, I don't get hate. I don't understand it. I don't understand the public figures who encourage this kind of behavior. And so when I look at these articles and it's just so much and it's so overwhelming, I have a tendency to want to blame. I have a tendency to want to bury my head in the sand, um, sort of explain it away as, oh, this is just the right. But I recognize that we're living in a very, very, very scary time that I've never experienced. I've never experienced anti-Semitism in my entire life, um, living here
Even
in this
even
little
now,
bubble.
you still haven't even now.
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
But my world is very small. It's getting a lot bigger. And my children also haven't experienced a lot, surprisingly.
Where did they go to college?
Ohio State and Cincinnati.
Because Ohio State's definitely had some.
Yeah, but again, I think there's a bubbleness to their worlds that maybe we created for them. Um, you know, there was some Jewish fraternity stuff that happened at Ohio State, but I don't know, maybe they're just oblivious to it and they're not thinking about it. They walk around with their Magenta David out all the time. They don't think twice about it.
Okay. Beth, you and I
Yes,
have talked about this before, but
yes, we have.
I would like to know your thoughts today.
Yeah. So, I agree with a lot of what everyone said, hopeless, helpless. To just sort of add to what, and so just for me, how does it make me feel? It is, I think helpless and hopeless is actually the top feelings and scary in that I do think about my grandkids. I think about in Germany, like the accessibility of and the differences here is that people can put whatever headlines and where there are allies, but they're not speaking loud. You think about what people can get away in at colleges and the things they've allowed to happen is not normal. It is not what the United States has done. And we've all said this. If you put a different culture versus the Jews there, you would never allow this. So that's what's actually, and whether it's coming from Qatar, whatever, people are allowing it to happen. Like the majority of people have allowed it to happen. I think some schools, back to Ohio State, even over, like different schools have managed it because you have to let people have their opinions about things, but it's been terrible in other places. So that's one thing. Um, so I think that's another big deal. I keep thinking, we live in echo chambers. I'm not on Facebook or Instagram a lot, but all I see are people who are telling me the terrible things that have happened that I want to know. But I'm not seeing what anyone else is saying. And so it goes both ways. You only hear the people that you follow. And if they're this way or that way, you own that. That becomes part of you because you have no interest in finding out what's happening on the other side. So that's really frightening to me. I think that's what's different also than 90 years ago because the worst in people comes out when they find someone else with the same worst feeling. And that makes me feel sick to my stomach. But I think I always just go back to so two things. Number one is I somehow want more people to speak up for God's sakes. And maybe I'm not reading enough news about the people that are, but they're not. I'm not caring enough. And that's number one. And number two, I don't listen to news. I don't really look at headlines. I look at the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, just sort of get two. But otherwise, it's not that I can't take it like I'm falling apart. It's just I disconnect. I've compartmentalized everything because how can I do that? How can I live like that? And that is not helpful when you're feeling helpless and you want to do something. So.
Mhm.
Could I add
So,
something? Would that be
sure.
okay?
And then I want to go back to something that Nancy said, but go ahead, Hetty.
One thing that's curious to me is both Nancy and Gary, who live within the Orange school system, right? Thinking that anti-Semitism hasn't hit here when the Orange schools, the high school has had the anti-Semitic incidents recently. And I know there were some a few years ago because I learned about them when I was at Federation. And I wanted to point out one other thing that has affected me indirectly, but an organization I care about very directly. I mentioned Call Israel. So we have a program called Face to Face, and there are dozens of schools who participate. They come to our programs. And this year, as recently as a few weeks ago, we had 3 schools cancel. They had already booked their program and they reconsidered. And the reason they told us is because the name of our organization that's sponsoring it has the word Israel in the title.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pursuing that through a few other channels, working with the Federation on the community relations side of things. But this is really close to home, and it's also angering, frustrating, and helpless, hopeless. That the schools are doing that when they're supposed to be engaging. And so when we talk about trying to engage, I just want to point that out.
So, how about it, Nancy and Gary, about what's going on in the orange schools, and yet you're not connecting that with your experience. Can you speak to that? And real quickly, and then I want to go back to something
I
else.
can't say much because I'm not tied at all to the Orange schools. My kids
Okay.
my kids are, my kids are
They're old.
mid-30s to 40s. So
So,
I'm
so does
totally
that
disconnected.
mean if it's happening in your schools, in your community, but your kids are not there, it does
I'm not
not
aware.
affect you?
Well, no, it's that I was not aware.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so I think there is an element of that. Like, right, I don't have kids in the orange schools either. And most of my news came from the Cleveland Jewish News. So, like, I don't know if it was in like if it was on the local news. I do watch local news. I do listen to local news. But I mean, yeah, it, I recognize that it's here. It's right. And and like, look, like our bubble is our bubble, but I recognize that it's not as simple as that, and that there are, I just would think that compared to like friends in other cities, our experience on the east side of Cleveland is unique in that, yes, okay, anti-Semitism is not gonna, it will still affect us, but I'm not sure it's affecting us in the same way personally that it might be affecting, friends in Atlanta or friends in Houston, or I think that's my point.
Okay. So thank you for that. So Nancy said something that I want to follow up on, and that is that she says, I don't get hate. I don't get the people who spread hate, the public figures who encourage this behavior, right? Um, what did the rest of you feel about that? Why are public figures, as Nancy says, encouraging the behavior of hate? Beth, I'm going to start with you.
It's a good question. As an aside, and Hetty, you were with me. We went to the JFK Library in Boston, and you listened to the debate between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy saying, "I appreciate your opinions and your thoughts, but I think a better way to think about it, what I would do differently is this." That's how they engage together. I think that I think it's been happening in politics for years. I think um, Trump and there were certain limits as to what was acceptable. And I think when Donald Trump came around, those somehow he was someone special, and so those all went out the window, I think. So I think that's number one. There was hate before. There was, already there was like this real fight between Republicans and Democrats. But I think what's happened is, and the divisiveness of Trump, even within families, and for some people who don't talk to siblings, who don't talk to, it was so emotional because he was so extreme in that way. So I think that I don't know. I but I don't understand it, frankly, because the people you hang out with are the people you hang out with. You loved them yesterday. Do you not still love them today? But somehow it's become commonplace to someone disagrees, there's something wrong with them, and on all sides, and they're bad, they're this, they're crazy, and then it turns into you don't care about this country, you don't care about me, you don't. It's turned into some sort of craziness. But I honestly don't. And I think I'm gonna, I may sound like the little old lady,
Hmm.
but I also send it back to social media. When you didn't
Oh,
have
yeah.
that kind of access, you know, you you just had your own thoughts and you talked to people around you and you read the newspaper. But right now, every bad thought you have is amplified 1,000 times over. And once you hear it from someone else, you think, this is okay for me to feel this way. This is okay for me to, we all have prejudices, but some people are so happy now they have a group of people and it just keeps expanding exponentially. So I honestly blame social media, I think.
Gary, what do you think?
I also cannot wrap my head around hate, and I certainly can't wrap my head around anti-Semitism. It's been around forever. Unfortunately, I don't think it will ever leave us completely. I hope it gets better, but it's not something that I can understand. Um, as far as politicians, um, I agree with Beth. I think these are complex problems, obviously, and simple statements aren't gonna cut it. But I do think social media and people ramping each other up. I think that podcasters who are pandering to these some of these podcasters that are pandering to the people who need something to hate, and the Tucker Carlsons of the world, um, uh, and the audiences that they get is something that leads to this. I truly can't blame Trump entirely for this, and I don't know if he's causative or reflective of, and maybe it's a little bit of both of what's been going on in our society. But regardless, I mean, there certainly seems to be at least a correlation, if not causation. Hard to know. But again, I mean, hate is just something I wasn't raised with, and it's not something I can really understand.
Okay. So I am reading a book now, and I'll give you the title, The Secret War Against Hate. It's by Stephen J. Ross, and he says that the U.S. has been fighting a war against hate since World War II ended. And it's a well-researched book, and I'm just in the early stages of it. But he says that hate has been amplified in the United States because it's been unified under one person, right? Some of you have already named President Trump. And what he says is that there were a number of splinter groups, if you will, different Nazi groups, white supremacist, Ku Klux Klan groups that were very active in the United States, particularly in the South, but in Ohio and New York and California. And he said that they lacked a leader, they lacked a unification. They tried and tried and tried to unify, but it was only until now that they've been able to so-called unify under one leader. And that's a dangerous place because that does tend to lead to mainstream hate. And that's where some of the headlines cite mainstream hate, political hate, as well as anti-Semitism. So, but that also makes it harder to speak up against hate, right? So, Hetty, you speak at the Maltz Museum. Did you have any hesitation about agreeing to speak with us today?
Not at all. Why would you ask that question? I'm curious what
Because
the
because a lot of people find it hard to speak out against hate, to speak their mind about hate these days. We've already talked about social media, and how you can be pilloried on social media. So
yeah.
that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I understand. The word that I would use that hasn't been used yet, though I agree with what both Beth and Gary said, is scapegoatism.
Okay.
And that, once again, I connect many things to Nazi Germany. I see many parallels, even in the election of Adolf Hitler as a minority candidate, how he came to power and how things changed in a second with executive orders and all those things. I mean, I draw a lot of parallels to that. Um, and these things tend to happen. Different groups are targeted because another group needs to have somebody to blame. I will go so far as to say I squarely put the blame for the public outpouring of hate in ways that we hadn't had before. In 2015, when Donald Trump was on the campaign trail, and the very famous time when he was speaking to a group, there was a press conference, and a disabled man, who had some palsy and what have you, and Trump went making fun of him. That allowed all of what happened afterwards, from Mexican immigrants to Haitian immigrants to whatever, and then now to tensions within African American and different racial things in this regard. So these things, and thanks to social media, which there are some good things about social media, but many times I wish it never was invented because of that. All of those things have allowed certain groups to make other groups scapegoats, blame them, and allow others who maybe wouldn't have thought about it on their own to then hate that group because that's what they should do.
Mhm.
No, I would add about hate too, whether it's hate or not, is but along this conversation, I also think that I agree that it's exacerbated, I think, since Trump has been here, but also as it relates to anti-Semitism, it didn't feel, I hated the hate, but it didn't feel as personal as it does right now with the anti-Semitism. And so that's a differentiator for me. Before it was politics and, will vote and, it's like hard to fathom there'd be another person. But that being said, right now so I don't want to diminish that, but it's the thing with anti-Semitism and the specific hate directed against us and because of Israel. And I want to say, gee, you don't like Trump, so you're going to blame the rest of the Americans for being bad people. Like we might say half of us supported Trump, but they don't know who we are. And it's really feels like this, and I think and so my point is, I think it's been fomenting for years and years and years behind the scenes. We know that dollars have been funding
Sure.
into the most, idealistic young people who are in college who, haven't lived their lives yet and elsewhere. And so that almost is, so anyway, that is far more, sort of insidious to me because I've gotten so inured to the political hate, the right and left and the whatever in a way. It's very strange, but the anti-Semitism based on Israel, which I strongly support. But how is that possible that what's going on in another world, it's so anti-Semitic. Jews can't come in here. We don't want because you use the word Israel because of this and that, and Jews are excluded and canceled all over the place. And it's much
Mhm.
more so in some of the left-hand groups, like the Women's March, all that kind of stuff.
I would also add, uh, for me, an additional differentiation, and I agree with both of what Hetty and Beth said, especially about the 2015 election. For me, that was a huge turning point, that all of a sudden we had political candidates who were given permission to just treat people badly and nobody called them out on it. Or, if you remember in what was it like early 2000s when Howard Dean ran for president and he was going along gangbusters and then all of a sudden he made one speech where he looked a little crazy and then he was out. Like we didn't give people nobody was allowed to do anything back then and we didn't even really have social media. But in relation to the book that you were talking about, I think we're kidding ourselves to ever think that hate didn't exist before 2015, or even before the Holocaust. Like, I think we recognize that there's a little bit of hate in all of us. In some, like Beth said, we all have our prejudices, but hate's maybe not the right word, but we all have our prejudices, and in some communities that's greater than others. And there's I think I'm always been this underlying, right? You're different from me. I'm not sure I like you, I'm not sure like or I was taught that Jews are X or Muslims are Y. And that all of a sudden the floodgates opened. And after that 2015 election, the American society was given permission to be public with their hate and with the things that had been brewing underneath without apology. And with, in some ways, with the blessing and the permission of leadership.
Hmm. Gary?
Couple points. One is when you talk about reading books about hate. If you've ever read A Fever in the Heartland, it was the story about the Ku Klux Klan back in the, I want to say, 1950s. And the Ku Klux Klan was unbelievably powerful to the point where they were actually trying to get a hold of the presidency and be in the White House.
Mhm.
And obviously there aren't many more bigger hate groups than the Ku Klux Klan. So, it's always been in our midst forever. Obviously, why it turned on us all of a sudden, I think there's a lot of factors. It's interesting that I attended a lecture about 10 years ago at one of the synagogues, and it was a professor from Atlanta, and she was an expert on anti-Semitism. And her comment at the time was, we don't have anything to worry about because the governments aren't supporting anti-Semitism. When the governments start to support anti-Semitism, that's when we're going to have to worry. Well, left is supporting anti-Semitism, the right is supporting anti-Semitism. It's time to worry. So those are my 2 points.
Okay. So did, just a show of hands, I only asked Hetty this, but the show of hands, anyone have concerns about speaking with meeting with this group today about hate, expressing your point of view?
No, I'm not going to give you a show of hands. What? Okay.
Well,
Um,
I was just going to say, only because my nature, this is not my nature to be in a public forum.
Okay.
uh,
And the only reason I'm doing it is because my dear friend Beth asked me, and I couldn't say no.
Well, I'm grateful to your dear friend. Beth, you were going to say something.
I was going to say, honestly, no, but I'm so fearful of everything. Anything is accessible, available online, and you just never know. And this talk is about hate. It's not about Israel, which means I felt more comfortable doing this. But it's a crazy ass world we live in, where anything you
Mhm.
say, whether it's with someone, but if it's online anywhere, if they see anything, it's a scary world. So anyway,
So if we were talking about Israel, you'd have greater concern.
I think so. I wouldn't have greater concerns, but I would think after something was published or online, I wouldn't want to go read comments because I imagine like you almost feel at risk these days.
Okay. Do others agree with that?
Yes.
I would still say something. However,
Yeah.
I will never post anything online. I don't believe in that, and I don't believe in engaging in any kind of a discussion because you cannot speak to people when you post your feelings online. I don't understand why people do it. There are other ways to show your support or your dislike for something.
But
You
but do
know,
you have concerns about speaking about Israel on for this particular conversation, Hetty? If
No.
we were? No? Okay.
I mean, I'll give you my opinion now, but we're because our focus is hate. But sorry, Nancy, I think I
no,
interrupted
I
you.
was just gonna say, in response to Hetty's comment about social media, we're doing it to ourselves too within our own community. Like we can't, some of us are so far away from each other and it's not necessarily just a political thing. It's the minute somebody posts something and it's not the bots, it's our community that's going after each other for
Yeah.
an opinion that maybe they don't agree with in ways that are really, really upsetting.
Hmm.
Mhm. Once you post something like that, you close off the door to discussion. You can't walk it back, and you can't say, "Well, wait a minute, let's have a do over." I mean, I suppose you could, but to me, discussions should be held in person with people, and not that way.
And I think this plays into hate a little bit around what the hate has caused in terms of the sort of the sort of the butting heads, which is a different opinion is a different opinion, that's all. But so many people are used to ascribing judgment to it and to how can you think that? And that's a terrible thing to say, where if you stop and just think about what's said, it's okay. It's not, there aren't crazy things. It's just I'm disagreeing with what you might think off the top of your head. And that's not good. You just I mean, I jump at things and then you sit back and say, okay, wait, let me understand what's happening. It's
Yeah. And where does that person come from? What
right.
made them want to say that? And when you can have an understanding of where someone comes from, then you can start to say, I come from this place, and this is why I think this way, but maybe we can come to a middle ground.
That's your point about dialogue. It
Yeah.
like if you know somebody, if you get to know them and you hear
Right.
their story,
Right.
then I mean, maybe it's not okay that they feel a certain kind of way about something, or maybe it's uncomfortable that they are a Trump supporter or whatever it is, but that knowing allows you to have that personal connection where it's much harder to then turn around and bash them. Although social media makes it so easy to do that because it's relatively anonymous.
Yeah, it's two-dimensional. It's yeah.
But the other thing
So
is we're talking about big hate, and I'm just going to say this, and then we're talking about with small groups, one-on-one, we can have conversations, but the world is like,
and
Well,
that's what I want to get us talking a little bit more about how this is impacting you all personally. Uh, you ever feel like because of all the hate, maybe it's not in your bubble, but it's on the news, or someone comes back from school or gives you a call and tells you about a story about hate, do you ever find it impacting your mood or how you move through the day or if not, how do you protect yourself from that? I'm going to start with Nancy on that one.
I would say on a daily basis.
Daily
Like
basis.
not a day goes by where I don't read something, see something on social media, hear something in the news, something that affects my mood. I, if you know me, I'm a pretty positive person and I try to look at the glass as half full, in most, most of the time. Um, but I think that this is, it's getting to a boiling point. Um, where, sometimes it's hard to get up. It's hard to get off the couch. Um, it's easier to just turn it off. And so I would say it affects my mood for sure. The mood, maybe not on a daily basis, but certainly on a daily basis, there is something that I see, hear, read that that affects the way that I look at the world.
How do you pick yourself up?
Oh, I exercise a lot.
Okay.
Walking is the cure all for everything. There's also some really, really good positive podcasts, and like little positive, like do you guys know Steve Hartman? Like Steve Hartman from CBS News. He does these really, really short, it's called On the Road, these really short, like 2.5 minute stories about the wonderful things that are happening in the world, people who are caring and kind to each other for no other reason except that that's in their nature to be caring and kind. That helps me.
Gary, how about you?
Not a day goes by, I am not on any social media, to be
Okay.
sure, zero. But I have email and I subscribe to most of the pro-Israel um, emails like Win and AJC and the other ones. So I get bombarded with these headlines daily. And there's days when I just say, "I, Lord, I just can't take it." Swipe, delete, delete, delete. And a lot of it is redundant as you start to learn and they recycle things. But it definitely, there comes a point where you just have to say, "I can't deal with this right now. I'm just going to move on. I'm just going to move on with my life, and or at least my day, and take it day by day."
Do
So
you see this coming to an end?
no, not in the near future. Not in the near future, that's for sure. Um,
Beth, how about you?
I'm only praying that it doesn't get worse.
Okay.
Um, so a few things, like I feel things every day. I feel fear. I mean, I really am fearful sometimes. I hadn't had a Jewish star and in Israel, I didn't feel fear. I must tell you, I was there in January and September. I did not feel fear. I mean, we were thinking we'd have to run to a bomb shelter, like 12 of us and a teeny one with a pregnant woman. We did not have to do that. But even that was different. It's and I'm wearing this a lot more once I got it. I I'm fearful that someone's going to say something or do something or whatever. So that's one thing. And it's funny, at the knit store, someone came in with a like a Palestinian flag band, and so she had a kid, she's very nice, like I'm saying, hi, I thought that's what it was, whatever. But then I think she notices this and says, can you help me pick the right green color for this? I want to make a lot of them. I said, sure, happy to, like. But on the other hand, on the other hand, um, you know, it was an attempt to intimidate me or to try to make me uncomfortable, which she didn't do, but it was in a safe place in a freaking knit store. These things can happen all over. And again, kids on campuses, other people in New York and other places have experienced it, and you see it. And I'm fearful. I'm fearful for my grandkids, I'm fearful for myself, for my kids. I don't know that they're as fearful as I am, truth be told. And then on the other hand, though, like I feel a lot of joy in my life. I'm grateful. I have I do what I want to do. I exercise, I see friends, I walk, you know, I don't know what I do, but like at this point in my life, as I get older too, it just like it's all good, And so it's a very weird thing to be living in this bubble of, oh, this is just great, I'm happy. And then I read something like, wait a minute, like, hold off. This is your little world, but you live here. So it's weird.
Hetty?
Uh, some of what everyone has said for sure. When uh, when I when I'm confronted with hate and how do I react to it, I have been known, not so much lately because I'll turn it off, but I scream at the TV a lot because I can't scream at anybody else. I don't know who to scream at. I scream at the TV. Like Beth just said about grandchildren, I'm blessed to have 6 of them. 4 of them are here in town, and 2 of them are really little. One's 3 months old, and one is 7 months old, almost 8 months old. And I call them my baby Valium. So when I hold them, and I had my littlest one here today for a few hours, and he'll be here again tomorrow, and then I'll see everyone for Shabbos dinner Friday night. And I hold them close, and I think about that. And at the same time, when my daughters-in-law were pregnant, I'm thinking, what the hell are they doing bringing a child into this world? I'm desperate for this child. I want this child to be here so badly. Maybe this child will be the one who will change things in the world. But I'm so scared to death for their future. And the one last thing I'll say is that recently we had a big disappointment in our family. We were supposed to have had my oldest granddaughter's bat mitzvah in Israel. It was supposed to have been 2 weeks ago. And we held on as long as we could, even after United canceled all of our flights. The trip itself wasn't officially canceled until just a week before, because we kept hoping that the circumstances would be that we could go. But ultimately, for a variety of reasons, it was determined that we couldn't. And I was just really angry at this. Don't know exactly who to be angry at. I mean, I can be angry at our leaders, both our Israeli government leaders, some of them, and United States leaders, but mostly just that this hatred exists in the world. I was raised with live and let live. And my neighbors on either side of our house growing up were German. They weren't born in Germany, but they were German. And there were people who knew my parents who said, how can you live next to Germans? And how can you be friendly? We called them aunt and uncle. I mean, they were lovely, and they knew we were Jewish, and we knew they weren't, but there was no one blaming anybody, and they knew us and they loved us, and vice versa. So I just have this fundamental not understanding. And sometimes that drives me crazy. It'll keep me up at night if I start thinking about it and I go down a rabbit hole. So like Beth said, like Nancy said, I do lots of walks, I do lots of exercise, and I have my baby Valium.
Hetty,
Love that.
Hetty, I don't watch TV, but I do listen to the radio, and I would scream when when I would listen to NPR, to the point where I will not listen to NPR anymore. I just cut them out of my life. I couldn't take it anymore.
So what provokes the two of you to scream and yell?
Because maybe they'll hear, maybe they'll wake up.
No, but what is it?
For me,
Is it?
it's the one-sided reporting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the one-sided. We're only reporting on this aspect of it, and making a very complex situation with a very simple reporting headline. That's totally unfair. And I would scream, and then I'd call my wife and I'd scream at my wife saying, I can't believe what NPR just did. And then finally I just got to the point where I said, I can't listen to NPR anymore. It's just not good for my health.
I don't watch and listen to news, so I don't yell, but I would feel like yelling, and honestly,
it's the news. Okay, Hetty,
but some of it has to do with the stupidity of what's being said.
Yeah.
Some of it isn't that it was one-sided reporting. They're reporting something as a factual something, which is factual, and it is unbelievably stupid. So I scream because it's so stupid. How can anyone think that this is okay? My opinion.
So how is all this frustration, fear, sadness affecting your Jewish identity? Is it leading you to embrace it more? Is it leading you to suppress it? Is it leading you to question it? How is it affecting you? And I'm going to start with Gary.
I mean, I have a profoundly strong Jewish identity, and this only makes me madder and it strengthens it. And I try and look for ways to to support Israel and to support my Judaism and support our synagogue. So it's not going to diminish my position at all. My
Hetty?
Um, Same as what Gary said. I feel very strongly about being Jewish, about my Judaism. I feel I had a conversation earlier today with someone else who is a 2G, a child of survivors, and it becomes something that's stronger and more in my head all the time. Most of our philanthropy, and we try to be as generous as we can be, goes to Jewish causes, not exclusively, but most of it. And most of my time, I'm retired and I'm on several boards, organizations, and committees. Two of them are not Jewish, but there are links to things that are Jewish because of a program I used to manage, but I'm involved in it. The federation called the Cleveland Israel Arts Connection. So two arts organizations that I'm on the board of, we partner those organizations with Cleveland Israel Arts Connection, and I make sure that there's Israeli artists who are coming in, and that people understand Israel to be a place of amazing culture and glass breaking art and all that, and not thinking about other things. So.
Beth?
I think it's only I've always felt an incredibly strong connection and identity to Judaism, and I just feel Jewish in in the bottom of my gut, soul, heart. Um, and it, but this does make me want to somehow express it more, do something. And I'm pretty involved in the community. I say Frank is the person that's going to get us into heaven, though, because he does a lot of like he's the really kind and does kind things. So I'm thankful for him. But that being said, there's I think without this, it's easy to be complacent, and I'm far less complacent right now about being Jewish and just sort of, it's easy just to go with the flow. And I feel like my stake in the ground is a little deeper and stronger, and it's really important because otherwise, so I don't know, otherwise what, but I hope that makes sense.
Okay. Nancy?
I would agree. My Judaism only gets stronger and stronger. I mean, I feel like Jewish is my first name. Like
Mhm.
I walk the walk, I talk the talk. I'm like Judaism comes out of my pores. Um, that said, there are ways in which our community, I'm not just talking about the Cleveland Jewish community, I'm talking about the American Jewish community and Israel in particular, um, have been behaving in the last several years that is not particularly Jewish. And that causes me a lot of distress. It doesn't make me want to be any less Jewish, but I think we have a higher standard. I think we should behave better than we are. I think Israel should behave better than she does, really behave better than she does. Um, and we have a lot of history that teaches us how we're supposed to behave, and I'm just not sure we're there. We're certainly not doing it.
Anyone have a reaction to what Nancy said?
I'll say the only reaction I had to what Nancy said is that Israel should behave better. I look at it as I agree with the things that the content of what you're saying, but to me, I point my finger at the current leadership of Israel, and I believe that the people of Israel, the vast majority of them, want to have peace with their neighbors. And we see many stories and many examples of where it's still going on in small ways. It's hard when you have certain people in positions like Smotrich or Ben Gvir and others who allow things to happen. So I would just differentiate that it's not Israel together. It's the leadership who caused those.
I thank you for that clarification because that's what I meant.
I know, I'm sure you did.
I, and look, in our world, it's hard to separate out Israel from the government. I do
Right.
also believe that the Israeli people want peace. They want a different reality. They don't know how to get there. I mean, hopefully with the election, they'll get there. Um, but the government, the officials, in the same way that I believe that our government is not behaving well, um, I believe the Israeli government is really not behaving well and has a responsibility to be more Jewish than that.
Well, the behavior of the settlers in the West Bank
Exactly.
is atrocious.
It's condoned. Right.
Right, right, right.
Okay. We've covered a lot, and I told you all I would try to keep this to an hour, but we could keep this going for a while. And I have to say that you all have been great. So I'm going to draw this to a close. Uh, I want to ask you two quick questions. So Hetty made reference to this, but in a recent Impact of Hate interview with Hillel International CEO Adam Lehman, he referenced a common sentiment of Jewish college students that there is a price to pay for being Jewish. Has this always been the case? Has it changed recently? Do you all agree with that sentiment? Disagree with it? I'm going to start with Beth on that one.
Yeah. I certainly didn't feel that way when, well, I mean, how old am I? 48 years ago, I didn't feel it, but I don't think my kids really felt it either, and they're in their 30s. But I think right now, I mean, you can just see what's happening. I think there's a tremendous price to pay. Not every kid feels it. It depends on where they are. But I think there's certain places that the campuses have allowed this to happen. They have not protected students, and I think there's a tremendous price. And feeling you can't go into buildings, you don't know if you speak up and someone points out you're Jewish, you're going to be, whatever, kicked out. I think, and it's not in all colleges, but I think I think there's a tremendous price to be paid. And I think in probably other places that I don't know about, there are too, but not in the way
But
I'm
is
doing with
is
college.
there, do you feel there's a
Do
price
I
to
feel
pay
price
for
to pay?
yourself for being Jewish?
Um, no, no, not at all. But I wouldn't define it that way. But I think I wouldn't ever frame it as a price to be paid for being Jewish, but I do feel that I'm on edge and I'm worried and all the things we said, but I'm not sure I would call it a price to be paid. I don't think, I don't see it as a price. I think it's everyone else
Okay.
that's being
You don't
shamed.
see it as a price, but you are describing a certain price.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Fair. Like, right. I wouldn't frame it that way, but I guess that is exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Frame
Nancy?
it however you want.
I personally don't think there's a price to be for me personally. Um, Again, I live and work in the Jewish community. Um, I would say that 75% of the people I interact with on a regular basis are Jewish, probably, like just
Maybe more.
every Zoom call, everything. But I, again, like we live a unique situation. My husband is an ER doc at Geauga Hospital. And as of right now, there doesn't seem to be a price to be paid for that, although he's been there for a very long time. There's an acceptance of the fact that he's Jewish. It's not an issue. I don't know if that would be true if he was in a different place. Um, Gary, you might be able to speak to that a little bit better, but like I think it really depends
Mhm.
on what community you're in, where you live, and what the political climate is like, and um, what the economics are. Because uh, you know, years ago there was that movie, The American President, and he said, their job is to tell you what's wrong in the world and who and why you're suffering and who's to blame for it. So if we're the ones that are always you know, blaming, being blamed for everything, then, in more rural areas or in different political climates, that there is definitely a price to be paid for being outwardly Jewish.
Gary.
Sure, there's a price to pay. Um, and I think it's mostly on the impact on our psyche. and fear for the future. And we talk about the fear and the anger and the hopelessness. These things, these are a price. This is a price that we are all paying. Um, there's also a financial price. It's expensive to be Jewish, especially if you keep kosher. And Camp Ramah and synagogues and Jewish day school and et cetera, et cetera. So
Security.
I know that's not what you meant specifically, but there's a price on that end too.
Sure. Hetty?
Yeah, I agree with what Gary just said with when you think about the cost of it. But the price, I do believe that there is a price that we pay as Jews that we need to pay, but it isn't in the same vein as what the college students are talking about. I think it just means that we need to always be the best people we can be and to be a light unto the world, to be fair, to not foment hate, to work against it. So if that's a price to pay, then that's a price, but that's how I hope we always try to lead our lives anyway. And then I just wanted to add one little short anecdote. When you were asking before, I think you were asking Beth, David, that does this feel different? Did you feel this way years ago? In 1967, I was graduating from 8th grade, and people were signing my yearbook, and I was in a school system where there were very few Jews. I mean, there were very few Jews in Joliet, Illinois, but people knew who was Jewish. We were all very friendly. There was nothing, whatever. And every person in that class, none of whom were Jewish, signed my yearbook like, "You go, girl! Israel, great!" They were so excited and felt that that 6 Day war that Israel was justified in winning and fighting back and all the things that happened. And I cherish that, and I think, oh my God, look what happened to the world.
Is there anything that you all wanted to raise tonight that we didn't discuss?
I wouldn't mind just discussing what kind of an action plan? Like, how do we help? How do we move forward? Do we just support Wiesenthal? Do we, like other than, as Hetty said, being the best people we can be, and trying to be a light, but there's got to be something more we can do. I'm not sure what it is, and that's why I opened it up.
Don't you think we're all doing things? I mean, you do things in your world that are helping. I mean, the things that I do of
I'm talking bigger. I'm talking
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
There's organizations that have put things together. AJC just came out with another plan to fight anti-Semitism. These big, writ large things, and they're well-meaning for sure. But I am so skeptical and forlorn about whether or not they're really going to be implementable and what it means.
Gary, I think that way all the time, and I had felt that way about Israel too. And then I wanted to do something because after the first time we came back, it was like, Israel is not its government, it's its people, period. And so then I got involved in OCC and like really in meaningful ways. But this is so big. That's the other thing. You just feel like, because you're right. I always think, what can we do? What can we do? And people are doing good stuff. Federation's doing stuff. Everyone's trying to do stuff. Is it moving the needle at all? I don't know.
I don't know.
Nancy, anything to add?
I mean, my response to all of this is what Hetty said at the very beginning is that I am working on getting to know people that I wouldn't normally know and talking about what it means to be Jewish and learning about what it means to be something other than that in and really listening without judgment, um, like one person at a time. And it's not a big thing, and I don't know if it's moving the needle. Um, but I like to think that it is. I mean, like if you know somebody, you really know them, you try to understand them, it's much, much harder to hate.
Okay. Well, on that note, I will thank you all for your time, for your willingness to talk about this subject. This has been just a wonderful discussion. Beth, thank you for helping to bring the group together.